Hello and welcome to part 2 of how to identify or to distinguish God's presence and power from any other. In the first video, I shared with you 2 points, and I said that we are remaining with 3 points on how to identify whether it's really the power of God or it's not. So let's quickly go to the remaining 3. So point number 3 on how you can identify God's power and how you can distinguish it is, in his presence, God kills your flesh. The presence of God, the genuine presence of God, will kill the fleshly nature in you. That nature experiences death. I will not say death as death because there is a whole subject I'm going to do, a whole teaching on that. You'll understand or you'll know how to kill the flesh in you. Okay, I will teach on that. But for now, allow me to use it just as a word. It experiences the nature, the carnal nature in you experiences death when you encounter the real presence of God. It becomes numb. It cannot function. So when you are in the presence of God, there is no way you are in his presence and you are thinking, how can I get here? So you can go and do your next sin. You can go and carry out another sinful act. That desire, that drive dies off in the presence of God. That mindset, how do I go and carry out my next robbery? How do I go and deceive? How do I go and manipulate? How do I go and show this person that I'm enraged? All those things die because in his presence, that nature is numbed. It's killed off. It's cut off. Okay? His holiness is imparted on you, his holiness and his righteousness. That means in God's presence, his divine nature begins to impart on you. That means in his presence, you know if I stay here, I will never look at sin again. You know it very well. If I stay here, I can win I've already won all my battles. I've already overcome in his presence. Why? Because his nature has been imparted on you. And you can tell within yourself. It is as the story of the woman who had the issue of blood. She could tell within herself that it had stopped. So when you encounter the real presence of God, you know that everything that was wrong in you has stopped. It dies, it gets cut off, and you become conscious of the righteousness and the holiness and the purity of God. So you begin to you gravitate towards that. God's holy presence and his holy nature rubbing on you, imparting on you, makes sin unnatural for you. So automatically, what was so natural becomes so unnatural. Okay, let me hurry up so I can finish this. I will do a full series on these teachings so you can get, but I'm just squeezing it for you. Okay, the presence of God, it brings you to an accurate revelation of who God is. We tend to define God according to our selfish desires, our fleshly minds, and our fleshly ambitions. We bring him into a box of our human understanding. But when you encounter his presence, the more he comes out of that box that you have created for him, the more God comes out you begin to see him in the real image that he is. Your image and the understanding of God begins to be balanced. You will not see him as only the loving, compassionate God, but you will also see him as the just, uncompromising God. So he brings that view in balance. Okay? Pointer number 5. Excuse me. Excuse me. This one is really not a point, but it's a key thing that you can pick. In number 5, I've put it this way. All the other things we have mentioned, they become permanent in your life on condition. Condition is you remain in the presence of God. That means all the things we have mentioned will remain permanent in your life if you remain in the presence of God. But the moment you walk out of his presence, you will be like the virgins who had their lamps, but they did not have enough oil. While they walked to go and meet the groom, thinking that their lamps were still having oil enough to carry them, they actually realized that there wasn't enough oil. So if you walk out just because you have been filled just a little bit, whatever it is you received, whatever image of God you received, how much your flesh was dead in his presence, whatever thing that you gathered in his presence, the moment you walk out of his presence, you are back to square zero. And that process can take a week, a day. For some people, it's even just a few hours, 30 minutes, they're back. It may take a day, it may take a month, it may take a year, but you get back to zero. So you'll find that you've been a Christian for 20 years, but your growth and your progress is that of a 2-year-old child. Because every time you walked out of his presence, your lamp did not carry enough oil to sustain you until when the groom comes and he finds you ready and burning. Okay? So when you are in his presence and you remain in his presence, you will walk in the fear of God. You'll be drastically and dramatically transformed. Your flesh and your carnal nature will be dead. And you will walk with an accurate revelation of who God is. It means you'll be in a position to reveal God to the world because now you know him. Jesus said to the Samaritan woman, "You people worship what you do not know. But we worship the one whom we know." So it's possible for people to be in worship for years, but not know the one they're worshiping. Christians. The things we've mentioned, walking in the fear of God, drastically being transformed, your flesh being dead, all these things are not produced because you have prayed so much. They are not produced because you have fought so hard. You have tried your level best. I've given in my all. That's not what produces it. By the way, all that is the works of the flesh. When we as Christians begin to operate with these statements, I've given it my all, I've done my prayers, we are going back to the flesh. All these things are produced because of God's presence. When God comes in, when God shows up, all things disappear. Where his true presence is, evil and sin do not reign. Okay? Where God's presence genuinely is, sin and evil will not reign. Where God's presence is, righteousness and truth and peace will reign. Please mark that. Righteousness, peace, and holiness will reign, because those are the attributes of God. So, my dear friends, from today, do not struggle. Do not say, I need to fast and pray for me to know. No. Just look at what this presence is producing in yourself, in the church where you are fellowshipping, in your prayer group, in your community. Then you will know whether the presence of God is there or it's not. And you will know, wherever you see miracles, you see signs, just look at what spirit is in operation by looking at the fruits. The fruit that manifest afterwards will tell you and will show you whether it was God. Sometimes there can be dust, but it's not God. Be blessed and be victorious. Believe always. Amen.